for many years, when queerness couldn't be spelled out on screen, recognizable signifiers, tropes sent a message to in-the-know audiences.
Our first scene was apparently a little too much implied in your
Kaveh is so gay. Gay, homosexual, gay.
That's suspicious.
Academics at Shanghai University have been told to identify LGBT students.
Well, the evidence is quite overwhelming, isn't
The way
it?
he saved him during the Archon quest and the way he held his die just isn't straight.
In September 2021, China's broadcasting regulator issued a ban on Nian Pao, or sissy men.
Gay. No, don't! That was homophobic, Paimon.
The problem with Lyney is that for some people, he dresses kind of feminine, or some people might say, looks gay.
Twitter user and fan artist extraordinaire Noron recently wrote in a tweet, "I don't know if I'm too far up my ship's ass that I can't think clearly or what, but I'm so convinced that Hoyoverse wrote haikaveh as lovers." Noron, no, you are not too far up your ship's ass, and I'm here to tell you why. Hey, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. My name is E, as in like, eventually, I'm gonna be talking about tiny little gay people. So hurrah, today is my lucky day, because today's video is all about doing a deep dive into the queer coding that is in Genshin Impact. So I briefly mentioned wanting to do this type of video in my last video, ranking Genshin Impact's biggest controversies, which you should go check out after this one if you want to. When I mentioned Alhaitham and his gay ass, and the response has been so overwhelmingly positive, so I first wanted to say thank you guys so much for the encouragement and the support. Hey, it means so much. Okay, just wanted to say thank you first. So I'm really excited to share with you guys what I cooked up for today. So that being said, I have a script. So if you see me looking off to the side a little bit, as if someone's holding a gun to my head trying to make a ransom video, that's not what's happening, okay? I'm reading a script, so just mind your business. So as a member of the queer agenda and someone who has been in fandom culture all my life, I have time and time again been surrounded by queer spaces that surprisingly make up a lot of fandom. So I have ample experience with storylines and characters that were perceived as being queer-coded or used as queer bait, or instances where Tumblr was just being Tumblr or Twitter was just being Twitter, and the fandom just kind of hallucinates seeing a queer relationship when there honestly wasn't anything to suggest that. Okay, I've done that, you've done that, we've all done that. Okay, it happens. You know, it's hard out here when you literally have zero good representation, so our bad that we want to see our stories being told in a respectful way are bad. But I digress. I tell you this because I want you to know that with all my experience and the evidence that I'll be bringing to the table today for this video, I want to hereby state that Genshin Impact is, in fact, a queer game. I know, whoa. Big statement. I hope this video can shed some light as to why I make this statement, and hopefully it may change how you perceive this game. So I want to split this video up into 3 different segments. The first, what is queer coding? The second, how queer coding differentiates between cultures and some examples. And the third being a deep dive into 3.5 Genshin Impact ships that are really good examples of the subtle queer coding that is done in the game. There will also be examples of some standalone queer characters that I find to be heavily queer coded that stand by themselves that aren't in a ship. A lot to tackle, I know. So I suggest getting a little snack, getting comfy, drinking some wine, if you are of legal drinking age, of course, so we can dive into this together. All right, you ready? Let's go, dude. I'm so excited. Also, like the video, please, and subscribe, pretty please, so you could help support the channel so I can continue making deep dives like this, and also follow us on Twitch. Okay, thanks. Let's get into it. So first off, what is queer coding? Some people online may get queer coding and queer baiting confused, but they're very distinct in their approach and intentions. Both use subtle signifiers to hint at a character's queerness. This is through their interactions with other same-sex characters that may be more than, oh, they're just really good friends, or it could be through how the character is described, color coding, their manner of speaking, or anything else that may make you go, hey yo, are they like you know. Usually in both instances, the characters are never explicitly stated or shown to be queer. There is no announcement, no balloons fall from the sky, and it's generally left up to the audience's interpretation. It becomes queer baiting when the intentions go from accidental to intentional with zero payoff. Maybe in the writer's room, they made two dude characters overly familiar, which made the fandom scream gay, and the show continued to lean in heavily on the seemingly romantic relationship to make viewers continue watching without ever having to make them gay. A few examples of this that come to mind is Voltron. Even though I've never watched the show, it seems to be the general consensus online. The CW Supernatural, I have watched this one. Yes, this one's true. And the anime Sound Euphonium. These can be stated as baiting, since they seemingly decided to profit on the draw that these alleged queer characters created without ever having to face any of the responsibilities or consequences of making them actually gay, queer. Yeah. So now queer coding is when all of these subtle things occur, tell us like, oh, hey, this person's a big old Fruit Loop, but we can't outright say it because we might get in trouble due to the culture or time frame the piece of media is existing in, or it may just not be super important to the storyline. Now this, I believe, is true for Genshin Impact. Hoyoverse, the creator of Genshin Impact, is of course a Chinese company based in Shanghai that unfortunately has to conform to Chinese censorship under the CCP or the Chinese Communist Party. China is of course not the most open to same-sex relationships, so all reference to them or their existence is purged from popular media. This context behind Hoyoverse as a company gives us ample evidence to differentiate between their intentions between baiting and coding. Because how can you bait audiences into digesting queer themes when actively showcasing queer stuff will get you in trouble, sometimes even mortal danger? So that is part one finished. But how does queer coding differentiate between cultures?
What the is going on in here on this day?
So queer coding is entrenched in culture, and some coding to Western audiences holds no ground to the East and vice versa. Only those in those cultures will be able to point them out, and literally those who know. I of course can speak extensively on Western hints and nudges, but I will be heavily relying on research for some coding that stems from Chinese culture that I'll never be able to fully do justice to since I was not raised in it. When I start talking about the ships that I see as being overly queer, I'll bring forth evidence that doesn't necessarily rely heavily on previous knowledge of certain cultures, but those will definitely be talked about when suitable to the best of my ability. So before we get into that, let's give a few examples of some very popular forms of queer coding to give you a rough understanding of what I'm talking about. I would say some of the biggest amounts of queer coding that I unknowingly ran into as a child were a lot of the villains in Disney movies. These were characters that had an air of gayness or weren't conforming to traditional gender roles that highlighted how different they were from the main protagonists. As Haley Medina points out in her article on queer coding in television and film, some popular versions of queer-coded characters would include Ursula from The Little Mermaid, Hades from Hercules, Scar from The Lion King, and these are just to name a few. I think Elsa from Frozen is actually a really good example of positive queer coding, since the act of her parents trying to suppress her powers is a common trope for parents trying to suppress their child's queerness while growing up. Elsa also doesn't partake in any romantic relationships, and a struggle with her inner self is something a lot of queer people can relate to, so she would be a really good example as well. Now, when it comes to non-Western queer examples, I turn to Intersection Magazine's Chu E. Rachel Nye's piece, The Art of Queer Coding in Mainland China, Part 1, The Untamed. Since Chinese works are under heavy censorship and observation, creatives have to be, well, very creative when they want to signal to audiences that gay relationships exist. The novel, The Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, is a famous example of this. It is overtly queer, but its TV show adaptation, The Untamed, lacks any gay representation for the two main characters due to it just straight up not being allowed. This isn't baiting, since we know the context, but there is a lot of coding, with certain phrases, actions, and attire that signifies to Chinese people that these two are two old Fruit Loops. For example, the two main characters in the TV show adaptation perform instances that denote their queerness, such as using each other's birth names when talking with each other. This is usually an instance only reserved for those who are closest in your life. Usually courtesy names are used instead. Nye also references many scenes in her article, one being where they visit one of the character's family home and they bow 3 times to the altar. In traditional Chinese weddings, bowing 3 times is a regular occurrence, bowing once to their ancestors and family, one to heaven and earth, and another to each other. There's also a moment when the two give a young girl lucky money together, which is an instance usually reserved for married couples. This is just a few examples from one piece of media, but it's giving you good examples example of what I'm talking about. I highly recommend reading more on this show if you're interested. Of course, all the sources that I use for this video will be linked in the description down below if you want to read up more on this show or anything else that I'm talking about today. So these examples I discussed was, of course, to give you a good understanding of how queer coding can differentiate and exist in different shapes and forms. Now for the part that we've all been waiting for. How does coding exist in Genshin, and how does that make Genshin a queer game? To answer those questions, I want to talk about Hoyoverse's past with actual canon queer relationships in their stories and how they are directly affected by censorship. Hoyoverse is under direct control of the Chinese Communist Party and, of course, its laws on what is allowed in popular media. Documents from the Beijing International Game Innovation Conference in 2021 were leaked online, detailing topics that are allowed in video games and topics that aren't. Overly effeminate men, with Venti from Genshin Impact being cited as a direct example, he's so famous for that, were not allowed to be portrayed in games. Additionally, when it came to the topic of same-sex couples, any mention or depiction of them were strictly not allowed, with the translated document stating, "The love story of same-sex characters, we will limit the word use in such a story. You can only say they are best friends." Okay, so just because this was directly pointed out in a game conference about censorship does not automatically mean that we should turn to every single friendship in Genshin Impact and be like, oh, so this means they're gay. No, it doesn't mean that at all. But it does mean in those instances where a really close friendship in the game feels like it's being insinuated as to be something more than just friends, we can look to these censorship guidelines and use them as a way to confirm what we are all thinking. Also, it helps to know that Hoyo has an actual past canonizing queer relationships, with Bronya and Sela in their past Honkai games sharing a canonical romantic kiss in the webtoon that had to, of course, be removed later on. They also seem to have this romantic relationship in every single iteration they show up in. Literally like, I love you in every universe, like, okay. Also, Kiana and Mei from a previous Honkai game are considered to be in love, with Kiana canonically having feelings for Mei, and in Guns Girl Z even stating that she is, in fact, a lesbian. Okay, so the very fact that Hoyoverse would risk repercussions in order to canonically and explicitly display queer relationships as opposed to just coding them in their past should prove to you that any strong hinting or queer coding that is present in Genshin should be taken as truth beyond speculation. When I found out that Hoyo actually has a past of canonizing queer couples but were silenced, it made all of those, wow, that's a lot of queer coding moments into, oh, so they mean they're actually gay, but they just can't confirm it. The fact that they were instructed to use words such as best friends and that they have a past should honestly remove any doubt that you have over whether or not Hoyoverse is on that gay grind. So, now with all that context behind us, I want to be talking about 3.5 Genshin Impact ships that I think are just really good examples of the coding that I am talking about. So disclaimer, your favorite ship might not be here. Most likely it isn't. Okay, I'm only doing 3.5. Honestly, if I did more, I would be here all day, dude. There's so much. So of course, if you want me to do a part 2 to this with more ships, then I would love to do that. Just make sure to comment down below, let me know. Also, the fact that there is so much evidence still to dissect after all of this context I just gave you, like, honestly, turn off the video, we're done. Like, we're done. I think I proved my point. But anyway, let's just get right into it.
Why are you gay?
To start off our actual discussion of evidence, I want to start with a ship that is one of the most, if not the most, heavily implied queer pairing in the game. And that would be, of course, beigguang. This ship is one of the most popular pairings in the game, and there's a huge reason why. So Beidou and Ningguang make up the ship if you weren't aware, and they have a type of relationship that makes you go... Beidou, the captain of the Crux fleet, is known around Liyue as the uncrowned lord of the ocean. Ningguang is, of course, head of the Liyue Qixing, second only to the god Rex Lapis himself. Both women are in extreme heights of power and independence, with Ningguang holding a position in society that demands respect in her presence, something Beidou doesn't seem to give often, and Beidou being the leader of pirates. Already, they break traditional gender roles for women in media, so that's a really great place to start. In their voice lines about each other, there's this air of familiarity. They are definitely close, with them constantly teasing and bickering. Kazuha mentioned once in Beidou's absence that she was summoned by Lady Ningguang, and Beidou was grumbling under her breath about how she's a stick in the mud. Kazuha thought it was funny and endearing, somehow implying that it happens often. Ningguang is someone who has to oversee rules being followed, something Beidou is great at not doing. In one of Keqing's voice lines, Keqing mentions how often Beidou breaks those rules, and Ningguang just happens to be too busy to punish her. Ningguang states in a voice line how Beidou breaks these rules often, with the amount of fines she has procured probably being comparable to the amount of a whole nother ship. Beidou addresses her as Ningguang, as opposed to her formal titles, and actively challenges her on many occasions, sometimes beating her in chess games, which is bold enough to even try and win, let alone actually win. Ningguang seems to find this all very amusing and likes to tease Beidou back. I see this as Ningguang enjoying banter with an equal, while everyone else around her positions her to be lower than her, socially speaking. During the second Lantern Rite Festival, Ningguang tasks Beidou and the Crux fleet to find missing pieces from her destroyed jade chamber in the ocean, with the traveler being asked by Ningguang to help the captain in her effort. Paimon asks Ningguang if she forced the captain into doing this, and she literally says back, "Payment is one aspect of it, but I also compensate her in other ways. Hee hee, let's just say it's a little complicated." Hey, what? Hey, Ningguang? Hey, what do you mean by that? Later, it's revealed that Beidou got an invitation to go up, or to the Jade Chamber, to play some chess with Ningguang in her private quarters. Yeah, you two enjoyed that chess. Yeah. Chess. Later, they were found drinking in Mondstadt together for a bartending event, with Beidou playfully explaining how Ningguang invited her to a vacation to Mondstadt together. After both playfully say they both wanted to hire the traveler to be a bartender for them, Ningguang states to Beidou that if the pirate ever wanted drinks, she could always just come up to the Jade Chamber. Also in the Jade Chamber, there's a vase in Ningguang studies labeled "From the Crux Fleet," which is from Beidou. And then, well, of course, there's this scene.
Hey, check you out. Looking pretty fancy.
Only a true treasure catches the eye of Captain Beidou. Seems I've struck gold with this one. Seems I've struck gold with this one.
Bro, what did you just say? I just said...
Seems I've struck gold with this one.
Nah, bro, that's still gay. No, you're gay! He's gay!
And that's not all of it. Now, some of you, I recognize, may still be skeptical and may just say, well, this just proves how good friends they are. Which, I admit, we still haven't gotten too far into it yet, but still, I want you to sit here and I want you to imagine Beidou being a man. And then with all the evidence that I've told you up until this part happening, would you still say they were friends then? Or with Ningguang being the man, would you still say that? Would you still look me in the eye and tell me that they're friends then? It changes a lot, doesn't it?
Only the finest of treasures catch Captain Beidou's eye. Seems I've struck gold.
Huh? Additionally, I want to talk about the coding in both characters individually. Okay, not to bring gender into this, even though I want to. Let me know if I should do a whole video on this in the future. But it isn't often to see fully independent, realized women whose main purpose has nothing to do with becoming wives or having children. Additionally, Beidou breaks gender roles all the time and adopts masculine titles such as the uncrowned Lord of the Ocean, and is often referred to as in that role. She's loud and boisterous, not a common trait with women, and this break of gender roles can hint to some other traditions that might be broken, such as romance. According to Sol James from their piece Queer Coding in Genshin Impact, which is an amazing piece by the way, I highly recommend reading the whole thing, she points out the type of gender roles that these two fall into in Chinese society, where Chinese lesbians sort themselves into 3 types of gender expression. T, which would be short for tomboy, P, which is short for po, the Chinese word for wife, and then H, which would be the combination or an in-between of the two. Beidou is definitely a T, with how she takes on such monikers like the uncrowned Lord of the Ocean, and with her unruly behavior, heavy drinking, and overall gruff attitude. Though, yes, her model still is very feminine, but that's for the male gaze, okay? We're probably not gonna get any butch type characters anytime soon, let's be real. Ningguang is definitely a P, with her elegant way of speaking, her overly feminine attire, and makeup. I do find it interesting how often queer couples fall into heteronormative roles, with one adopting more feminine traits and the other one adopting more masculine traits, but it still is a common occurrence and should be noted when observing beigguang's dynamic. Also, it's interesting that in Ningguang's friendship level 6 story, it's pointed out how many men around Teyvat want her hand, but she keeps them at arm's length, with everyone around her asking, who is her real lover? This, as pointed out by Twitter user Unimake in their thread, is a common trait that Chinese lesbians often share, where they keep relationships with men at a distance just for their public image, but surround their inner circle with women, which is especially the case for Ningguang and all of her women secretaries. Also, there's some pretty damning evidence that lesbians just kind of like exist in Genshin outside of our playable characters. For example, there's this kid on the Alcor that states to the Traveler that he hears Aunt Furong, one of Beidou's crewmates, by herself chanting Beidou's name with her face all red. I'm sorry, what? What does that mean? Yes, that's literally in the game, dude. Furong also states to the Traveler how she only wants to marry someone who wins a round of something against her, I don't remember. But the only person who has done that ever is Beidou. Interesting. Additionally, Baishi, one of Ningguang's assistants, is found daydreaming about Ningguang. When you talk to her, some of her dialogue is of her talking to herself about Ningguang's gorgeous body, her lingerie, and her perfume smell. I don't know about you, but those are irrefutable examples of lesbians just existing in the game. Also, the fact that they surround the two characters that we are discussing provides some more coding for those two characters themselves. There's so many. Why is there so many? There's actually more evidence for beigguang, but we'd be here all day. So I recommend looking at the resources that I have linked in the description down below if you want some more. And also I recommend Unimaki's thread on their yin and yang symbolism and also how their names kind of reflect each other by how they're written out in Chinese. There's a lot of there with one character being referenced as the north, the other being the south, how they both kind of represent yin and yang in their own way when put against each other. It's really interesting stuff. I highly recommend reading up more on this thread. I think it's really cool. So that is one ship done, on to the next. So our second ship of the day will be Jean Lisa. Though Jean Lisa is not the most popular ship, nor does it have like an insane amount of evidence like others in this list, I just wanted to include it as a good comparison to the other ships. Though the ship does have really strong hints, it could be argued that they are really good friends, or it could just be like a translation thing. But if this is an example of light coding, then it should really put into perspective how much coding and hints there are for the other ships. First off, they do seem very close, with them always making exceptions for the other. They are often referenced in each other's official arts, with one of Lisa's birthday art showing her posing on Jean's couch, and with Jean having made her food. It should be noted that Jean didn't make her signature dish for anyone else on their birthday. They are pretty complete opposites when it comes to work. Jean overworks herself to the bone, while Lisa is allergic to work. Lisa sleeps on the job and tries to give her workload to other nights, which should be an action punished by Jean, but Jean lets it slide. Sucrose was caught saying once how Lisa often loses track of time and misses her patrol shift, but Jean will cover for her and say that she's just ill. Lisa, again, hates working, but if Jean asks her to work, she will. Jean in her voice line states, "When Lisa's around, I always have peace of mind." And in the first opening moments when we meet the two, Jean is clearly stressed with Lisa standing close to her, almost reassuringly. It should also be noted that in Jean's summer skin, Lisa herself sewed on a rose ornament onto the thigh garter thing. First off, weird place to put it, huh? Second, that is Lisa's symbol. She is the witch of the purple rose. And she sewed it onto Jean's thigh garter thing? Gay. In a story quest with Lisa, you hang out with her, and if you order Jean's signature dish at Good Hunter for Lisa to eat, she exclaims how that was exactly what she was craving, and reminisces about the times Jean would make it for her. Later, if you pick out dandelions for her, Lisa is surprised the shop sells them, and remarks about how they smell just like Jean. In the Chinese text, it is translated to state, "These dandelions smell like the sweet scent on Jean's body." Honestly, the biggest offender for me is Lisa's good morning line, where she states,
"Oh, good morning, Jean. Oh, it's you. Sorry, dear."
That implies so much. The good morning voice lines assume that you're traveling with your team in whatever you're doing and you guys wake up together. So how many times has Lisa woken up and immediately said good morning, Jean? Immediately, as if she was right next to her in bed.
It's getting weird.
Now you could say, but Jean and diluc, they have way more evidence. And I ask, do they? Or do they have like a few pieces of evidence, but they're a heterosexual couple, so that just makes it seem more canon than it is. I do agree there is something going on with Jean and diluc. It could be romantic or it could not be. But again, if diluc was a girl, would you be saying that? I don't think you would be. Even though this ship does not have that much compared to the others, I do think that all of the weird wordings and coincidences is actually like a lot for it to be considered one of the tamer ones. Again, disclaimer, this isn't all the evidence. There's more. Okay, and now it's time for the doozy. Kavehtham. First off, they're roommates. They're roommates. Roommates. That, my friend, is the biggest queer coding trope and like stereotype of all time. So like, honestly, we're done. Like, go home. Okay, it was nice seeing everybody, bye. No, okay, we're actually gonna get into it. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. So a little background on the two of them and their history and their past, okay? So they both met in the academia where they recognized each other as equals, but had a big falling out because Alhaitham was too blunt on how much of a martyr Kaveh is and how his idealistic nature is actually self-destructive. And he got his ass for that one. Was he wrong? They graduate, whatever. Kaveh goes through financial ruin with the whole Dory thing. Don't get me started, okay? And sells his childhood home to pay off his debt. He's effectively homeless and tells no one due to the fact that everyone sees him as this famous untouchable architect legend. One day, Alhaitham finds him in the bar and something just breaks inside Kaveh and he tells the man everything. The only person he's ever confided in. Alhaitham then offers for him to move in with him until he's able to get back on his feet and only really collects rent from Kaveh when he's able to pay it and also pays for a lot of things for Kaveh like drinks and food and stuff. Okay, so first off, the home they live in was actually a building awarded to them by the academia for their hard work on an important project while they were still in school. Kaveh turned it down, but Alhaitham kept it and remodeled it to be a home. That's the home they live in, that they share, okay? The one they got together. Second of all, Alhaitham, certified asshole, okay? This dude sucks. He only ever does things for himself, okay? When you think about Alhaitham, selfless martyr does not come to mind. Bro literally only decided to overthrow the government when his cushy job was in danger. All of the human rights violations aside, when it was his job that was in danger, that's where he drew the line, okay? He is the most capable man ever, but chooses to work as the scribe because it's easy and pays a lot. Alhaitham does not do kind things for others just to be kind. So, inviting an old friend that you've had a nasty falling out with to come live with you for an undetermined amount of time is a huge, nice thing to do. Do you understand that huge, nice things to do is not Alhaitham's MO, dude? Alhaitham obviously does this because he really cares about Kaveh like a lot, okay? Also, Alhaitham only participated in the whole Darshan event thing just so Kaveh could get closure on his dead-ass dad. The whole thank me 3 times thing at the end? Okay, Kaveh states multiple times that home is not a building, but a place with people you love, and yet, at the end of his friendship quest, you're instructed to go home with Kaveh. Yeah, because Alhaitham is his home, right? Because Alhaitham is the only dude that gets Kaveh on this planet, that gets that Kaveh is a self-sacrificing martyr that'll literally cut off his hand to make others happy. Alhaitham constantly keeps Kaveh in check. They bicker all the time due to Kaveh being very emotional and quick-tempered, and Alhaitham being overly blunt. Now, is Alhaitham good with communicating his emotions? No, not at all. But everything he does for Kaveh, as opposed to what he says, it's like Hoyoverse is shaking us, telling us, hey, they're gay. Hey, they're gay. And they're always bringing each other up in conversations when there was no need for it. And their birthday letters. Okay, I'm yelling. Okay, her birthday letters are the only letters in Genshin Impact where they do not mention their own birthdays, nor do they invite Traveler to come hang out with them. Alhaitham talks about books, like the nerd he is, and Kaveh talks about coffee beans that we picked out together. We don't need to ask, who is we? Cause we know. We know it's him and Alhaitham. We know that. We just know that. I'm gonna shake you. I'm shaking you. Wake up, sheeple. It's right in front of you. Okay. Now, there's some symbolism with their constellations. Okay, so their constellations. I think the biggest is Alhaitham's constellation, named Vulture Volans. Vulture Volans was the ancient Roman name for the constellation, now known as Aquila, which is Latin for eagle. There is this other constellation named Antinous that was originally thought to be separate from Vulture Volans, but upon further research was actually found to be a part of it. Antinous is the name of the male lover of the Emperor Hadrian, who named the constellation after he lost his lover to a drowning incident. This was also used as a symbol for male homosexuality. Alright. Also, when participating in Alhaitham's story quest, and you reach the chapter where Kaveh is present for, you notice that the chapter is called Pride and Prejudice, which is the name of the famous Jane Austen book where the brash and passionate woman has a hard time dealing with the bluntness and stuck-up nature of her male love interest. Where have we heard that before? Interesting, interesting. Also, she's from a family with debt, so that helps as well. It's a little nod there. Interesting use there, Hoyo. It also should be noted that some instances of the English voice acting have been noted as being more aggressive than in other translations. Kaveh and Alhaitham are portrayed as being far more aggressive and hostile towards each other in the English dub than in the others. I think this is used for comedic effect, and also as someone who is a huge fan of the whole old married couple bickering dynamic, I also find it like really funny and endearing. Also, the fact that they seemingly don't get along is the result of some very complex character layers found in each character. Alhaitham gets under Kaveh's skin because they know each other so well. Alhaitham thinks Kaveh's idealism will get him hurt one day and tries to stop Kaveh from thinking like this. I really see their dynamic as Alhaitham being aware of his feelings for Kaveh, while Kaveh is completely oblivious himself. He says he wants to move out, but makes himself at home with the decorations he puts up in the house. Kaveh is 100% someone who would think they don't deserve love and would be oblivious to any advances made by others. And everything that Alhaitham has done for Kaveh is something very special that others can see, but Kaveh doesn't. I also agree with the headcanon that Alhaitham is on the arrow A spectrum, but has only romantic feelings for Kaveh, which is another part of representation that I find very special. For further symbolism, I find it odd how the motif of mirrors is used quite often between the two of them, with Alhaitham stating how they mirror each other in his character story, with Kaveh's title being Empyrean Reflection, or Mirror of Heavens. Alhaitham's whole fighting shtick thing is based around mirrors. Their designs reflect each other, as do their character descriptions, which for the Chinese language is something that can't be done unintentionally. And knowing and understanding one of them is essential for understanding the other. You won't get the full lowdown with Alhaitham until you include Kaveh in it, and vice versa. They are essential to understanding each other as characters individually, and I honestly don't think there is another pair in Genshin Impact that is so reliant on each other for their story. Oh god, that was a lot. I'm sweating. Again, this isn't everything, which again is saying a lot. There is more I could lean into, but I just find these instances to be the most compelling for me personally. The more I wrote for the script, the more overwhelmed I got because there was just so much, and I got like, oh god, because I wanted to do them justice, but I also didn't want to be here for 2 hours. So yeah, there's a lot here. So yeah, this video is already quite long, and we've already done like very detailed analyses, okay, of 3 different Genshin Impact ships, which I think is honestly enough. But I just had to mention Tomo and Kazuha because there's just some things in there that like I just have to mention to you. Also, if you don't know, Tomo is the fan-given name to the mysterious friend from Kazuha's past that like died in front of him. Why am I laughing? I'm a terrible person. Anyways, RIP. Fly high, king. Tomo means friend in Japanese. That's why we call him that. That's just the name we've given him. Moving on. According to Soul James again, the cut sleeve imagery is actually a reference to the story between Emperor Ai and his male lover Dongxian. One day, Dongxian laid on the emperor's shoulder and fell fast asleep. When Emperor Ai had to leave for official business, he didn't want to awake his lover, so he cut his long sleeve where his lover laid and left to work. So mentioning a cut sleeve or having a cut sleeve on your clothing has become slang for gay in China. But anyway, why am I bringing up this story? Why is it important? Let's take a look at Kazuha and Tomo's sleeve. Kazuha's sleeve is cut and Tomo's sleeve is cut as well, though I'd argue that Tomo's sleeve is much more obvious than Kazuha's. Though it is essential to mention that Kazuha and Tomo are from Inazuma, which is based on Japanese culture and not Chinese, it is still such a huge character design decision and choice that I think should be pointed out. it also should be pointed out because Tomo was such a huge, influential person on Kazuha's life. He opened his mind and about challenging authority, and he brought a lot of peace to Kazuha's soul. Kazuha carries Tomo's vision with him all the time, even though it doesn't work anymore. And the one time it lights up is when Kazuha fights against the person that took Tomo's life. Like, oh. Again, not the biggest of discussions for Kazuha and Tomo, but honestly, I don't really think we need to do much else. Like, I feel like we just hit the nail on the head. There's definitely more, but I just wanted to mention this. Now I want to talk about characters that are just kind of like heavily hinted at being queer that exist outside of like ships. For example, Lyney. I feel like Lyney is probably the most obviously like queer-coded character we've gotten in like a while. He's so queer, in fact, that his trailer got mass disliked in Korea, and there was a lot of hate going on in Korea because they thought he was so fruity. So that's actually pretty sad, but also just goes to show that like even the homophobes are smelling this one out, boys. Also, this controversy will be included in the part 2 of the controversy video that I made recently. So if you want to know more about the situation, then don't worry, I'll talk about it. Don't worry. Lyney has a lot of flirty voice lines with the Traveler in the Traveler's Teapot, and they're the same regardless of if you play as Aether or Lumain. Which brings me to my next point, the Traveler. It's no leap to say that Hoyoverse uses Aether in all promotional material and tutorials for the game. They seem to see Aether as the canon MC, no matter how much I want to argue or disagree. Though this could be contentious, I think it's important to remember that when there are dialogue that implies romantic interests from certain characters towards the Traveler, it doesn't change based on who you are playing as. This game is very detailed. The pronouns change based on who you're playing, and everything has a backstory. Genshin Impact is a lot of things, but being lazy on the storytelling front is 100% not one of them. It's interesting to see moments like how Kokomi was teased for having a date with the Traveler, and these voice lines staying the same for when you play as Lumain. Heizo calls the Traveler dreamy, and this line stays for Aether. Ayaka has an obvious crush towards the Traveler, and those intentions are still there with Lumain. Lyney hits on the Traveler as Aether as well, and Xiao, well, poor baby boy, he's the biggest simps in the game. Again, the intention's still there with Aether. Also, Yanfei is in her Delulu arc, fully thinking Traveler has a crush on her, and she has a crush on the Traveler as well, and it doesn't change even if you play as Lumain. Now, the character Jeht comes into the discussion because she's confirmed to like be a lesbian pretty much. This is like the only time when the story changes depending on the gender of the character you're playing as. Jet's friend, Azarik, jokes around and says that Jeht treats him like a brother, and quote, "We'd get along better still if she didn't like hanging out with the ladies more." Jet's response is very flustered if you're playing as Lumain, but it's stern if you're playing as Aether. Additionally, later in the story, when everyone goes to sleep, if you're playing as Aether, the game's narration explains how Jeht gives you a nod and you go to sleep. If you're playing as Lumain, however, you get a whole extra paragraph detailing how Jeht sleeps close to your side, and how she smells, and how fast she falls asleep. Fellas, is it gay to talk about your best gal friend's scent? It's interesting to note that how the one time the story changes, it does so to uphold the confirmed sexuality of the Jeht NPC. The simping from the other characters don't seem to be checked by gender. They just seem to always simp for the Traveler no matter what. I take this lack of changing dialogue as intentional, and also a direct confirmation that some queer explanations have to be made and also can be made. It is subtle, but it seems to be a choice that the developers have made. A choice that, compared to everything else I've laid out before you today, it just doesn't seem like a coincidence or accidental anymore. Does it seem like that to you? Still? Nothing will ever be canon in this game, romantically speaking, so don't ever expect Hoyoverse to explicitly make anything canonized or obvious. But I must say, growing up in America and in the West, where censorship is nowhere near as intense as it is under the CCP, I gotta say, like, I don't find this much good queer representation as I do in Genshin. It definitely has gotten better in recent years for sure, but I feel like the majority of times, especially with stories that I had growing up, a lot of the time when queer people were represented, it was used in like a stereotypical way. They were villainized, or their whole identity was just being gay and that was it. Or it was like a whole queer baiting thing, you know? I just find the heavy amount of queer coding in Genshin to just be like overwhelming. From the NPCs to the Traveler interactions, and even the deep and profound lore in the characters themselves. It's even more of a home run when when we see that Hoyo has a track record with queer characters being canon, and they aren't allowed to be transparent with their storytelling due to censorship. The fact that Hoyo is so held back, and yet they continue to make characters this way, I think that's so awesome, and that is why I think Genshin Impact is a queer game. Well, that was a lot. Also, again, yeah, this is just scratching the surface. Like, there's so much more I could talk about. If you want a part 2, I could talk about Zhang Yunxingzhou, Emiko, Toma Ayato, Xiao, and of course, Zhongqi. I know some of y'all are mad right now. I know some of y'all are pissed as hell that I didn't talk about Zhongli Childe. I promise I will in the future if y'all want me to. I know there's a lot there, and Zhongli Childe is so popular. And the whole marriage chopstick thing, girl, I hear you, I know. I chose these 3.5 as a good starting point, and also I think they're really good in conversation with each other. Again, every single source that I've used for today's video is linked in the description down below if you want to read up on them. And you know what else is linked in the description? Yeah, my Twitch. If you want to hang out some more and you want to hang out with a really cool community, then go follow us over on twitch.tv/ESocial. I'm live Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays at 7 p.m. EST. Also, please make sure to like the video and subscribe to tell me and YouTube that you like this kind of content and you want to see more of it in the future. Every little thing helps in supporting the channel, so I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Comment your favorite piece of evidence for any of the ships that we talked about today in the video, or for any of the characters. I would love to read about them. Also, comment any opinions that you have. I just love reading your guys' comments, so definitely do that. Also, let me know if you'd be interested in videos talking about like gender, how women are portrayed in the game, also like censorship and stuff like that. Let me know what kind of topics you want me to do more deep dives about in Genshin. I had so much fun writing the script and filming it, so let me know if you're interested in those heavier topics as well in the future. I want to thank these amazing people right here, Richard_Miko, Sage Eternal, and the Stone Pilots, for proofreading this document and also giving me evidence for some of their favorite ships. So thank you guys, you're so famous. And I want to thank you for watching this until the very end. Okay, and that's all for today's video. If I don't see you on Twitch, then I will see you in the next one. Okay? Bye! Interesting use there. Hoyo? Hoyo? More like homo. Okay. It also should be